Funding for this podcast is provided in part by the IPM Network through the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture and by various commodity groups through checkoff dollars, including the United Soybean Board, National Corn Growers Association, and Cotton Incorporated.
The I See Dead Plants podcast shares the stories of people and plants, pests and pathogens, and the conflicts among them. Join us as we speak to the folks who attempt to solve complex problems with plants through pest management research. I See Dead Plants is an extension-based podcast created by the Crop Protection Network and the North Central Integrated Pest Management Center and hosted by Ed Zaworski.
Welcome back to the I See Dead Plants podcast. As always, I'm your host, Ed Zaworski. You're tuning into part 2 of my discussion with Dr. Tom Wolf as we talk about spray drones. Thanks for listening, folks. Tom, again, a million questions rolling around, but you mentioned like the change in volume per, set area, right? For a drone versus conventional application with, let's say, a boom sprayer. I got a lot of questions rolling around about that, but I mean, is there on a pesticide label, is there anything thus far for anything out there that kind of adjusts for drone application versus conventional application?
Yeah, that's a really important question. It is still, I don't believe, because of the federal decisions that have so far been made, that we have seen an agricultural drone spray label yet. What happened in the U.S. was the U.S. EPA allowed the states to individually decide whether or not drone spraying would be allowed, and it would grandfather in an aerial label for a crewed aircraft. So we do have those labels. And those labels will say things like, make sure your boom width is no more than 65% of the wingspan to prevent wingtip vortices. It's an important statement. It doesn't apply to drones because you can't change the wing. You can't change the boom width on these modern drone sprayers. So there'll be an exception for that. But they'll also say typically apply, labels are typically between 3 and 5 US gallons for most products. Now drones will likely be at the low end of that. So they're pushing the envelope a little bit. There are some aerial labels where the use rate, when it's used with an aircraft, is a little bit higher by virtue of the fact that you just don't have the coverage, possibly. Not many labels, but some. So that has happened. But we would be using the language on those aerial labels to guide our drone application, and frankly, not that useful. Different world. So in Canada now, our federal regulator announced in November that they wanted to move to the same model that the US has gone to, that Australia has gone to, which is to say, to allow a grandfathering of all crewed aircraft pesticide labels to be used by drone without the need for additional label language. So now we have the labels are going to be silent on how to spray with a drone, but yet it's going to be legal. I see that to be a problem. I think farmers really want to know how to use this stuff. And there is going to be a provision that is not currently in the US, but it is going to be in Canada. It's also not in Australia yet. And that is to opt out. Some chemical companies say, you know what, we're not comfortable with this product that is applied by crewed aircraft to be applied by drone as well. And we'd like to opt out until we know more. And then maybe it'll come back. So they will have the option of saying, do not apply by drone. But means a new label has to be printed, right? So it's a process. But do you see the gap there? I mean, I see a bit of a recipe for, mistakes, right? Painful mistakes, expensive mistakes, even.
From my, whatever you want to say, ivory tower and plant pathology in the field, obviously everything in agriculture is tied together and everything is complicated. especially this. But, from my narrow viewpoint, and I'm looking at, let's say tar spot or whatever fungal pathogen on corn or soybeans or whatever. I'm seeing and I'm hearing like this opportunity to, not just in a single year of crop, like have a mistake as far as like coverage and overlap and swath with, but also like the opportunity to misapply a fungicide such that you have like a sublethal dose and you're exposing fungi to these chemicals at a sublethal level and increasing the possible rate of resistance acquisition there too. So man, I'm dumbfounded right now, Tom.
Yeah,
There's a
it
lot
is.
of complications to this.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. The implications are pretty severe, and I think fortunately, I think we have one kind of silver lining on this is that many herbicides are not legally applied by air these days. The registrants have over time taken the herbicides off because the risk has been high, and they just don't want to deal with the consequences. There's still some, obviously. Certainly desiccants, absolutely, and they can be very harmful to off-target impacts. But for the most part, we're dealing with fungicides and possibly insecticides. So at least we have a slightly narrower area that we have to focus on and get our head around this. But on the resistance front, so I don't know resistance very well in the fungicide world, but if you'll excuse me, I'll give you a herbicide example.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah. No, that's great.
We basically have two basic, maybe three basic kinds of resistance. We have this target site mutation. The amino acid that is the target for the herbicide to exert its biochem, it alters its binding site with an amino acid sequence change. The enzymes of protein, so amino acid sequence changes, and then the herbicide no longer fits into the target site. That's target site resistance, and it usually confers tenfold resistance, something you can't really mitigate with a rate adjustment. It's just impractical. You can also have metabolic resistance, which is not as simple, but it's more far-ranging, which means the plant just learns to eat through multifunction oxidases and other, cytochrome P14. I don't even know what the proper name of it is, but it eats the herbicide. And both of those are developed through basically repeat exposure of the plant. All you're doing is you're selecting for those very, very rare genotypes that exist out there, and you're just allowing them to survive, and eventually they become prominent. You're not causing a mutation. You're selecting for a pre-existing mutation.
Yes.
The very act of applying the pesticide is the problem.
Yes.
So you want to avoid resistance, stop spraying, right? That's your biggest hammer. Right. Once you have resistance in the soil seed bank or in the pathogen, that fly, that secondary infection and stuff, that's going to be there for forever, right? Like not forever, because their seed bank but the proportion of resistant seeds in the soil seed bank doesn't ever go down. It only ever goes up. Eventually dies out because soil seeds don't live forever. And then there's the third type of resistance. That's what we call polygenic resistance. And polygenic resistance means that, let's say you have a plant that is a little bit more tolerant to the herbicide. And it says, you know what, this rate doesn't bother me, it kills my neighbors, but I'm going to make it. And if that plant makes it, and especially and almost exclusively if that plant is an obligate outcross, in other words, it's dioecious, okay? Like Palmer amaranth, like water hemp, where you have a male and female plant, and it will add diversity to its offspring because it's not selfing. So its offspring will possibly take the best parts of mom and dad. And if mom and dad both survived a sublethal dose of a product, the offspring are likely to be even more powerful, but not completely resistant, just more. But Jason Norsworthy, University of Arkansas, published a paper in 2021, a really good paper, or maybe it was earlier, I don't remember, where he said he documented that it took 3 generations of allowing sublethal doses to allow some plants to escape. If those plants can then propagate in the future, their offspring is more resistant. 3 generations, they found a 3-fold change in the GR50. Now you have basically an ineffective herbicide. It took 3 generations to do that. So how do you avoid that? You avoid sublethal dosing. And this is the only case where sublethal dosing is really, really important. It's not as important for the site of action mutation.
Sure.
And that means, hey, don't underdose, be as uniform as you possibly can, and certainly don't do it in the same place more than once, right? The underdosing, right? And carry that forward. So
and that
pretty
sounds
important.
like a difficult thing with drones at this point, just because it is so complicated, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think so. I think it doesn't bode well for that. Yeah, for sure.
I wanted to ask you, Tom, but kind of going way back. I mean, you mentioned like the inception of drones being used to spray, kind of being back in China and terraced rice fields and that kind of thing. Are there, I mean, if you're aware, I guess, like what situations are drones being used, and then where are they best used at the moment?
Yeah. I've been a bit of a downer on drones, haven't I, so far? So that's a timely question to bring us back to reality.
Yes.
Drones, drones do have a place. There's no question about it. Logistically, just imagine the following scenarios. I've got farmers who have low spots in their fields that they couldn't seed, and they use the drone to spread seed after seeding, and they get a good take on it. Canola is a good example. It's a small seed, doesn't have to be seeded deep.
Interesting.
It can fall into the small cracks and actually still germinate after maybe a little bit of a rainfall or something. They've got a good catch on those. So seeding is definitely one. And let's say the same low spot, you couldn't spray through it. If you've got a big heavy sprayer or an aircraft and you have to go out to a field that might be 10 miles away, who knows how far it is? Let's say it's 10 miles away and give a worst case example. Logistically, that's incredibly expensive to do. And with a drone, you could literally put it in the back of the truck and fly that on and get that low spot done. That's a perfect use for that drone, right?
Right.
We have, so the company Corteva manufactures a large number of industrial herbicides, and they're made for rights of way. So power lines, pipelines, anything where maybe it's remote, it's a little bit in the wilderness, far to get to, very expensive to treat, no tolerance for drift because you've got woods, forests, and wildlife nearby, waterways everywhere. Ground spraying, incredibly difficult. Drones have an absolute fit there. You can reach them. So they have a strong fit. And that's why Corteva is pursuing the registration of many of their industrial products with drones. And they have made, in fact, a drone-specific pesticide label for that. So that's a fit. There's extreme slope positions. I was at a drone conference a month ago, and lots of people came with their spray drones stories and said, look, we had a 45-degree slope. Like, it was literally impossible to navigate. But we were able to fly it very carefully. We were able to apply the products that needed applying, and that's been very good. Let's take another one. Let's look at endangered species. Let's look at invasive species. Coupling a drone camera survey with a GPS referenced spray map, you can curtail the spread of invasive species possibly with herbicides sprayed by drone in remote areas and preserve our natural areas. These are all terrific uses of the drone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I gotta give credit there. The utility of the drone is pretty amazing, but you still have to do it right? You still have to learn how to do it so that even on a smaller scale, it works for you.
That makes perfect sense. And I knew there was going to be some sort of scenarios where this is, like you said, where it all started was this scenario that it made perfect total sense. And it also makes sense to me. It's probably some form of human nature that, we would want to take that instance of extreme success and extrapolate it out to whatever we can. And
Yeah.
it does. I don't know what year did we start spraying stuff with drones, Tom? Like, it seems like, it's still relatively new, right? Like,
Yeah, I would still we're still in the early stages of it, right? So we've basically taken a technology that originated in Asia and have brought it over and scaled it up a little bit, made the drones bigger and more capable. But the basic design of the drone is still the same. It's a quadcopter. It relies on the downwash of the rotary wing to deposit the spray and spread it out. That, of course, brings with it the difficulties we talked about in terms of swath width. The swath width will vary. But not only that, even when you have a single swath and you've optimized all your flight parameters for that application, you still get variations in swath width. Let's see, in Canada, we have, like in the Great Plains in general, we deal in square mile sections, quarter sections, right? Is that the case in Iowa as well? So a typical spray pass in Saskatchewan, where I'm from, is going to be half a mile. You're going to spray a quarter section. You're going to go a half a mile. You're going to turn around and come back. And that practice is where I think we have the biggest issue with the drone. If you fly that half mile with an optimized configuration, in other words, you've got the right flying height, you've got the right flying speed, you've got the right droplet size, you've got the right water volume, okay, you will see fluctuations in the swath width on that half mile. The swath width will not be the same. It will be narrower and wider depending on sort of things that happen. Gust of wind comes up, for example. The drone has to compensate. It has to stay in a straight line. So it changes the rotational velocity of its rotors, which changes the downwash, which changes the way the spray deposits. You might have topographical changes, undulations. You might have to go up and down. That changes the lift again, and the downwash changes. So we've seen 30, 40% variations in the swath width that was observed on a single pass, just going straight, changing nothing. Operationally, nothing was changed. The swath width changed on its own. So that, to me, is a problem. And the reason is, it's like, how acceptable do you think it would be if you bought a John Deere R616 with a 135-foot carbon fiber boom, and you drove that thing the half mile down the quarter section, and it randomly shut off boom sections on the outer wing without telling you? It would just say, no, I'm off. Oh, I'm back on. That's what drones are doing right now.
right.
So, like, you have to give your head a shake. Like, is this acceptable? And what do we need to do to compensate for it? So what we need to do, what the only tool the pilot really has, is to tighten up the swath width a little bit and allow for overlaps to occur so that those little mistakes don't show up. Well, that takes, so now you're overdosing, your efficiency's gone down, your operational efficiency's gone down, but that's really what's required. So the question we have to ask is that progress? And that's why I'm skeptical about the implementation of the current drone models in broad acre farming, in large scale farming on flat fields. I'm skeptical because I'm not satisfied that we're advancing the state of the art in terms of the quality of the job.
So, Tom, I've been holding on to this one for a while. I didn't know quite where to interject it, but like, what is the driver that's pushing people towards this? You mentioned, like, if you had that big carbon fiber boom sprayer, you wouldn't be accepting of this variation. And I mean, yeah, I'm again in a place where I'm not super comfortable. Like, I don't know the cost of the machinery to get that boom sprayer out there, and the input costs of running that machinery. Is that the main driver of people wanting to use drones? Is that it would cost less to implement spraying, or what is driving people to want to explore this option over something that's tried and tested and works, right?
Yeah, there's a number of important drivers here, and I don't know how many there are, but let's just pick a few. You mentioned cost. That's definitely one of them. In the last 10 to 20 years, farm machinery cost has risen twice as fast, 3 times as fast in some cases, as inflation. So farm equipment is very expensive these days. And just to put some numbers on it, if you want to buy a modern sprayer that is a 400 horsepower engine with a 1,600 US gallon tank and a 135 foot boom, which is kind of like the state of the art right now, pulse width modulation, you're going to be spending at least $750,000 US dollars on that sprayer, at least. And if you put some options on there, it's going to touch $1 million very soon. A drone is going to be 35 to 45K. Now, let's talk about productivity. With this big sprayer, you're going to be able to do between 100 and 120 acres per engine, per hour, not engine hour, but per hour, per watch hour. So if you spray for 3 hours, you're going to be doing, 360 acres or whatever. With a drone, you're currently doing somewhere between 30 and 60 acres per hour. So about a quarter to a half of that. So there's a productivity issue here that we have. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a friend who has a drone, and we caught up. I said, what's your experience been? Have you changed your mind about anything? And he said to me, well, the other day I was spraying, well, not the other day, this was last year.
I do that all the time.
In the summertime, he was spraying a field with fungicide, and he said he spent about 3.5 hours doing that quarter section. I don't remember whether he used 1 or 2 drones here, but he said he spent about 3.5 hours doing it. And then he stopped, parked everything, washed his hands, and had lunch and ate a sandwich. And as he was eating his sandwich, he watched a spray plane come by and spray the neighbor's field, and he was done in 25 minutes. And he says, what did I just do that for? He said to himself. He confided that in me,
Yeah.
Because do you have 3.5 hours? That's the question, right? That's the question. Do you have that time? Because good agronomy is what? Good agronomy is doing the right thing at the right time. You want to control a disease? You got a narrow window. A really, really good spray applied at the wrong time isn't worth doing, right? But a mediocre spray at the perfect timing is golden in comparison, right? So that's kind of where we're coming from. So can you be agronomically efficient with a lower productivity amount? But that's an aside. So that's the cost and productivity equation. The second one is, I would say, very importantly, when I ask people, how do you like your drone? The answer is, well, I was able to spray my field in a timely manner. In other words, I didn't have to wait for the aerial applicator to have the time to come because they're backed up.
Yeah.
So they recognized, oh yeah, I need this. This needs to be sprayed today. I can do it myself if I have a drone. It might take me a long time, but I have the time. Okay. Third reason, no wheel tracks, right? Trampling.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Don't have to have a high clearance kit on the spray or whatever, right? You can do that. Saving of the custom application charges. What are you paying per acre for a custom applicator to come in? You might be paying $10, $15, $20, depending on the job.
Yeah.
Per acre for that job. And you save yourself that. Of course, you had to buy a drone and you have to pay yourself, And then, of course, we have, as we said at the very beginning, there's a bit of a strong push by the resellers, and they have a lot of marketing capabilities there, so it's looking good, and it's fun. Let's face it, flying a drone is fun, right?
Yeah.
I like flying my drone. It's a lot of fun. it's enjoyable. So where are we in this stage? Like I'm not a sociologist, but I sometimes think, are we in the stage of euphoria? Is that where we think, hey,
Yeah.
we could do this. Oh, look, it's working not bad. It's fun to do. This drone is cool. It's also inexpensive. The financial risk isn't high. I may be downplaying it and oversimplifying it and possibly insulting people, but this is what I think we're at. I think people are saying, I'm going to take this chance. I'm going to buy one. I'm going to try it out. And we will hopefully, like when I ask my farmers the question, how satisfied were you with the quality of the work that you did? The answer has been, well, we did fungicides and we didn't see a lot of disease develop, but it could be because it was a dry late summer.
Yeah.
So they weren't able to do a really strong evaluation of the efficacy of the work. If they'd done herbicides, it would have been very obvious, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So we're still in the stage where maybe we haven't done enough side-by-side comparisons or don't have enough empirical data on efficacy of drones. It's coming out. Like I reviewed the North Central Wheat Society proceedings, the Wheat Society of America proceedings, looking for people working with drones and what their results were. And I would have to say most of the researchers have been pleasantly surprised. They didn't think it would work as well as it actually did, with the caveats we already mentioned. So there is that. Mm-hmm.
Well, Tom, at this point, I'm excited to, I always have a set of wrap-up questions at the end where I kind of, do some speculation and this kind of stuff. But before I go there, is there anything that we didn't cover with regards to spray drones that you think is important that we should throw out there?
I think that the main thing to remember here is that we're in the early stages. We haven't had a lot of government input yet. So, they haven't responded yet to issues that might arise, safety issues, off-target movement issues, operator and bystander safety issues. These drones are heavy, they're dangerous, they have rotary wings, they can cut you if you're not careful, that kind of a thing. We haven't had crashes, at least, that not hugely publicized crashes. I'm not talking about a drone crashing. I'm talking about the drone colliding with another aircraft, which could be very devastating.
Oh, yeah.
So those are the things that I think still may happen and likely probability-wise will happen eventually. And there could be a federal government reaction to that is unanticipated. I've heard someone say at a drone conference recently that we need drones. We need spray drones to be able to do the work that we need to do. And I said, well, we worked without spray drones until now. Like, to tell me what you mean by we need them. I mean, how badly do you really think we need them? It's possible that we do, but I would say there are still alternatives. So if we lose them, it's not going to be a big disaster. It'll be a bit of a letdown. But for me, the key thing is the 3 E's of application, and they are efficacy. That's why we spray. It has to be there.
Yes.
Environment, protecting off-target movement. We have that responsibility. And efficiency, and that is timeliness, acres per hour. That's an agronomic imperative. And every single application method that we introduce has to be evaluated on those 3 E's. How well do they meet each and every one of those? Drones are currently not meeting the 3 E's, and we have to keep that in mind. We have to be completely dispassionate about that and say, what's in the best interest of agriculture? What's in the best interest of our crop? What's in the best interest of society? And evaluate accordingly and be prepared to drop technologies that don't meet the standard.
That transitions me perfectly, I think, into the first wrap-up question, which, I don't know what at this point in our conversation, I don't know if I'm getting, swept away in the potential negatives of drones, or if I'm getting caught up in the euphoria at this point, in the sense that I'm I can't help but, I hear everything that you're saying about the potential negatives and the tons and tons and tons of variables. But I also, you had that kind of uplifting moment of where do drones excel? And so it's tough because like in my mind, I'm like, well, you don't want to completely quash spray drones out of the equation, right? Because there's places where they could be useful, but also you don't want to use them where they're not meeting those 3 E's that you just mentioned, right? So I'm thinking, well, I want to hear yours. I won't taint you with what I see for like maybe the possibilities of drones in the future. But if you had a crystal ball, Tom, where do you see spray drones ending up?
Yeah, boy, like Yogi Berra said it best. It's hard to make predictions, especially about the future.
Yeah, I just mentioned the Jetsons in the last podcast, and that was somebody's prediction. And thank goodness we're not flying around in cars.
I'm of two minds here, Ed, and I honestly don't know which way this is going to go. In the one hand, we did see a slight lowering in drone sales in the United States in 2025 compared to 2024. It is shifting to North American manufactured or assembled drones, yes, but lower numbers. That is an indication that maybe the euphoria, if we want to call it that, or maybe there's another term for it, the initial enthusiasm is wearing off a little bit. So there's that reality check that's coming in. I'm really curious to see what happens in 2026. So drone sales will be a barometer of all that. The other thing I've noticed, there are when you drive into a farmyard and you go into the shop, I like to observe about what's around, right? You walk
Yeah.
the yard and there, what I have seen is I've seen the old camera drones, the first real popular generation, like the Phantom 4, that the white plastic drone that everybody bought, had a great camera, flew easy to fly. Everybody, took a video of their farm operation with that drone. Most of those drones are collecting dust right now. And you know what I mean? Like that's a possibility that because the investment cost wasn't great and we tried it out, we'd evaluated how it would fit on our farm, and then we decide for or against it, and that the loss isn't great. You mentioned life expectancy. Like they don't last as long as a steel sprayer does. A steel sprayer, you can put 10,000 hours on that thing. A drone might only last 3 or 4 years before some of the lighter components wear out and break. It's entirely possible. I don't know that, but it's possible that people will just let them lie. But then others, I think, if I was, frankly, to be quite honest, even though I've been a downer of it, I probably would own a drone, and it would be for logistical reasons. It would be to finish up a field edge that I wasn't able to finish, or a low spot, or whatever else, and I would just say, look, it fits into my operation. I can do stuff that I can't really do with my ground sprayer. And I'd like to have that. I'd like to have that flexibility, and I will accept on a small area that it's going to be suboptimal in some cases with swaths and this and that. But I'll take that into account. I'll just use it anyways. It's entirely possible that with the move to a North American manufacturing base for drones, that we will stop just making the rice paddy drones larger and start redesigning drones so that they address the shortcomings that we've identified, those being swath width, consistency, and uniformity across the swath width. And that can be addressed with a fixed wing design, a hybrid model of some sort. The Guardian drone was fantastic. I miss it already, even though it never actually made it to market. It flew low and fast with a wide boom, and it avoided the downwash and all the negatives that it presented. Maybe we'll see more of that. There's room for innovation here. So that relies on innovative individuals to pick that up and to manufacture a product that farmers actually need.
Yeah. What I have has been building in my brain. I mean, you mentioned like the places where a drone excels, like the low spots, the reseeding of a area that maybe was flooded and needs to be addressed, but without getting equipment out there and that stuff. I wonder, personally, I don't know whether to be terrified of artificial intelligence and machine learning and all this stuff coming down the pipeline. I think I'm leaning more towards like that it's going to enslave humanity and we're going to be but I mean, like, then, there's obvious positive ways in which this stuff can be used. And, like I think about precision agriculture, and there's so many people using drones for trying to identify diseases, measure nutrient deficiencies, measure plant stress out there in the field. And, yeah, again, kind of getting into this weird Jetsons future thing. Like, I almost can envision if we are not enslaved by the AI, sending out the Terminators to get us, perhaps it'll get to a point where these things can be measured and identified on a smaller scale level, and you could almost use drones in that sense, like to spot spray. Hey, we identified this area in the field to have particularly high, I don't know, tar spot. Go out there and hit it with that rather than broadcasting across the whole field or what have you, but that is
exactly.
that is a brave prediction. I realize, but and who knows what'll happen? We don't have crystal balls, but
and we focus because it's my wheelhouse on broadacre, arable crops. Right. There's a lot of other crops, and we work with someone at Michigan State who does horticultural crops, and they have a fit there too that we didn't even touch on, and I want to respect that space. Three-dimensional crops, we typically use an air blast spray from the bottom and spray up at them, and it's hard to miss the distant targeting of that far side of the tree. A drone is an ideal tool to fly over the tree row and to spray it down into the canopy, the parts that so that's a different topic, but I just want to give it a nod. I ignored it until now, and I shouldn't have. There are strong fits for that technology in other ag production systems.
But yeah, I think it's been a conversation of a good mixture of bringing people back to reality in some senses, but there's definitely some cool stuff that can be done as well. So my next question for you, Tom, is if you could give farmers like one message about spray drones, like if you were like, you got a couple minutes with somebody and they were like, what do you think about these things? What are you telling them?
Well, I'm telling them to seek independent data. Right now, most of the data is coming from the retail sector, and admittedly, there isn't a lot of independent data. But to do research far and wide and make sure you know what you're getting into, and to make sure that you're prepared to make adjustments, and to expect some unexpected results. To be quite honest, right now, it's a new area. To be humble in terms of the expectations and the ability to make it do the things that you want to do, and to just simply be, to put the crop and its health and the health of the environment sort of high up on the priority list. We are, sometimes farmers are called the stewards of the land, and I don't actually frankly love that expression. Farmers are responsible for taking care of the largest parts of our beautiful continent. And there is a certain responsibility to make sure that we pass it on in better shape than we found it. And you have to ask, what do my production practices contribute to that goal? And, is this maybe something I should or shouldn't be doing? It's a tough question, but it's more of a philosophical question. I would challenge people that way. And the other thing too is, in my career, I've seen particularly federal governments around the world react and sometimes overreact to bad things that happen. And it's our responsibility to prevent those bad things from happening so that there is no opportunity for an overreaction by a government. In other words, the banning of a spray drone. Like, that's what I'm talking about, of saying, look, no, we've seen too much drift. We've seen too much contamination of water. We've seen too many accidents with our aircraft. It's just not worth it. We're going to ban them. So it's our responsibility to make sure we deploy them as responsibly as possible so that doesn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. The last one, Tom, is one I always do, and perhaps the hardest question of all of them. If you had to sum up the use of spray drones to a member of the public, I always say, my mom, she lives in a Chicago suburb. Doesn't have any idea what's going on out there, right? What are you telling that person about spray drones?
I mean, I try to be as straight with them as possible. Like, I'm not going to try to paint some kind of a glossy, rose-colored glass image of it. I would say drones are rapidly moving into agriculture, spray drones, and that we are concerned about some of the things that they do and are studying them and are advising accordingly. But I'm certainly not going to say unequivocally that it's the right decision to implement spray drones on farms right now. I'm not, I wouldn't go that far. I'm proud of almost everything farmers do. I'm a strong advocate for farmers. I have been on the farm. I have farmed myself. I know I talk to farmers every single day. I'm in touch with them in some way or other. And I am absolutely smitten with the culture of farming and the humility and the goodwill that exists in farming. So I want that to rise to the surface and do the right thing for farming and for society. They've done it in the past, not always, but mostly. And I just want to also, ask the retail, ask the input industries to promote their products in a responsible manner. Yes, you have to answer to your shareholders, but do the right thing, right? There's no law that can be passed here. These are all individual scruples, and I'm just asking people to look inside a little bit and just make the right decision there.
Absolutely. Man, Tom, this has been a really interesting one. And at this point in the conversation, I like to leave space for you at the end to make any acknowledgments, point people to any resources.
Sure. Yeah, let me make the big acknowledgement, and that's to Jason DeVoe. Jason DeVoe is my partner in Spurs101.com. Jason is doing the heavy lifting on writing about drones and researching drones for use in agriculture. Jason and I started this website as a tool for practitioners. So farmers, applicators, maybe retailers, agronomists, anyone who's on the land or one step away from it, just one step. And we are trying to provide resources that are easy to use. It's a non-commercial website, so we don't sell anything. We're not sponsored by any commercial industry. We're sponsored by farmer money, so the commissions, the grain commissions are spending some money on us so that we can provide the website. Please use Sprayers 101. We just did a refurbishing of it, so it's got a completely new look and feel. It's got a super powerful search engine that searches. Type in one word, drone. You get too many hits, type in pattern. Too many hits, type in volume, and it just will filter it down until you get the article you really want. And it's intended for you. It's intended for the listener of this podcast. Please use it. It's free of charge.
Excellent. Well, with that this has been one that I'm going to be thinking about for a while. So I hope that you folks listening learned a ton about spray drones and agronomic practices in general from Tom. And with that, keep listening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Ed.
I See Dead Plants bridges the gap between plant science research and the impact it has on our daily lives. It is brought to you by the Crop Protection Network and the North Central Integrated Pest Management Center, which are both partially supported by the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture. For more information on today's topic or other pest management issues, check out our show notes, cropprotectionnetwork.org or ncipmc.org. Remember, this information is for entertainment purposes only. The statements made in this podcast should be interpreted within the limited context of the particular topics being discussed. Contact your state extension program for local information on pest management. For the full non-discrimination statement or for accommodation inquiries, go to cropprotectionnetwork.org/about. Music written and recorded by fellow plant pathologist Sean Toporek. Thank you for listening.